in the 20th century, in the early 21st century, what do you think works well and what is broken about government?
The fundamental thing is that we can't easily and peacefully start new opt-in governments. And
Like startup governments.
yeah, and what do I mean by that is basically you can start a new company, you can start a new community, you can start a new currency even these days. You don't have to beat the former CEO in a duel to start a new company. You don't have to become head of the World Bank to start a new currency. Okay, because of this, yes, if you can, if you want to, you can join. I don't know, Microsoft, or name some company that's a GameStop, and you can try to reform it. Okay, or you can start your own. And the fact that both options exist mean that you can actually just start from scratch. And that's just, I mean, the same reason we have a clean piece of paper, right? I mentioned this actually in the Network State book. I'll just quote this bit, but we want to be able to start a new state peacefully for the same reason we want a bare plot of earth, a blank sheet of paper, an empty text buffer, a fresh start, or a clean slate, because we want to build something new without historical constraint, right? For the same reason you hit plus and do docs.new, like create a new doc. It's for the same reason, right? Because you don't have backspace. You don't have just like 128 bytes of space, 128 kilobytes, and just have to backspace the old document before creating the new one. So that's a fundamental thing that's wrong with today's governments. And it's a meta point, right? Because it's not any one specific reform. It's a meta reform of being able to start new countries.
Okay, so that's one problem, but there, you could push back and say that's a feature, because a lot of people argue that tradition is power. Through generation, if you try a thing long enough, which is the way I see marriage, there's value to the struggle and the journey you take through the struggle, and you grow and you develop ideas together, you grow intellectually, philosophically together. And that's the idea of a nation that spans generations, that you have a tradition that becomes more, that strives towards the truth and is able to arrive there, or no, not arrive, but take steps towards there through the generations. So you may not want to keep starting new governments. You may want to stick to the old one and improve it one step at a time. So just because you're having a fight inside a marriage doesn't mean you should get a divorce and go on Tinder and start dating around. That's the pushback. So it's not obvious that this is a strong feature to have, be able to launch new governments.
There's several different kind of lines of attack or debate or whatever on this, right? First is, yes, there's obviously value to tradition, and people say this is Lindy and that's Lindy. It's been proven for a long time, and so on. But of course, there's a tension between tradition and innovation. Like going to the moon wasn't Lindy. Just, it was awesome. And, like artificial intelligence is something that's very new. New is good, right? And this is a tension within humanity actually itself, because, it's way older than all of these nations. I mean, humans are tens of thousands of years old. Ancestors of humans are millions of years old, right? And you go back far enough, and the time that we know today of the sessile farmer and soldier is, if you go back far enough, you want to be truly traditional. Well, we're actually descended from hunter-gatherers who were mobile and wandered the world, and there weren't borders and so on. They kind of went where they want, right? And, people have, had done historical reconstructions of like skeletons and stuff like that. And many folks report that the transition to agriculture and being sessile resulted in, diminution of height. People had like tooth decay and stuff like that. The skeletons, people had traded off upside for stability. Right, that's what the state was. That was what these sessile kinds of things were. Now, of course, they had more likelihood of living consistently. You could support larger population sizes, but it had lower quality of life, right? And so the hunter-gatherer era, maybe that's actually our collective recollection of a Garden of Eden, where people, just like a spider kind of knows innately how to build webs, or a beaver knows how to build dams. Some people theorize that the entire Garden of Eden is like a sort of built-in neural network recollection of this, pre-sessile era where we were able to roam around, just pick off fruits and so on, low population density. So the point is that I think what we're seeing is a V3. You go from the hunter-gatherer to the farmer and soldier, the sessile nations are here and they've got borders and so on, to kind of the V3, which is the digital nomad, the new hunter-gatherer. We're going back to the future because, what's even older than nations is no nations, right? Even more traditional than tradition is, being international, right?
Mm.
And so we're actually tapping into that other huge thread in humanity, which is the desire to explore, pioneer, wander, innovate,
So
and I
the
think that's
way
important.
to make America great again is to dissolve it completely into oblivion. No, that's a joke.
I see. Yeah, I know it's a joke, but the thing, well,
Humor. I'm learning this new thing.
yes, a new thing for the the chatbot emulation isn't fully working there.
Yeah, yeah, glitch. We're in the beta.
And let me say one other thing about this, which is, there are, I mean, everybody in the world okay, let's say, I don't know what percentage, let's say 99.99%, or it rounds to that number of political discourse in the US focuses on trying to fix the system.
Hmm.
If those folks, 0.01% of the energy is going towards building a new system, that seems like a pretty good portfolio strategy, right? Or 100% are supposed to go and edit this code base from 200 something years ago. The most American thing in the world is going and leaving your country in search of a better life. America was founded 200 years ago by the founding fathers. It's not just a nation of immigrants; it's a nation of emigrants, right? Emigration, from other countries to the U.S. and actually also emigration within the U.S. There's an amazing YouTube video called it's like 50 states, U.S. population, I think 1790 to, it says 2050. So they've got a simulation. So you just stop it at 2019 or 2020. But it shows that like Virginia was like number one early on, and then it lost ground and like New York gained.
Mm-hmm.
And then like Ohio was a big deal in the early 1800s. And it was like father of presidents and generally all these presidents. And later Illinois and Indiana. And then California only really came up in the 20th century, like during the Great Depression. And now we're entering the modern era where like Florida and Texas have risen and New York and California have dropped. Mm-hmm. And so interstate competition, it's actually just like intercurrency competition. You've got trading pairs, right? You sell BTC, buy ETH, you sell, Solana or Z, sell Monero, buy Zcash, right? Each of those trading pairs gives you signal for today on this currency is down or up relative to this other currency. In the same way, each of those migration pairs, someone goes from New York to Ohio, Ohio to California, gives you information on the desirability of different states. You can literally form a pairs matrix like this over time, very much like the link matrix. That's shaped America in a huge way. And so, you ask, if this nation of immigrants that was founded by men younger than us, by the way, the founding fathers were often in their 20s, right? Who endorsed the concept of a proposition nation, who've given rise to a country of founders and pioneers, who've literally gone to the moon, right? Those folks would think that this is the end of history, that's it, we're done. Like we've done everything else. There's people in technology who believe, and I agree with them, that we can go to Mars, that we might be able to end death, but we can't innovate on something that was 230 years old,
So there is a balance, certainly, to strike. The American experiment is fascinating, nevertheless. So one argument you can make is actually that we're in the very early days of this V2. So what you describe as V2, you could make the case that we're not ready for V3, that we're just actually trying to figure out the V2 thing. You're trying to skip.
When are we ever ready?
Now, again, we'll go back to marriage, I think, and having kids kind of thing. I think everyone who has kids is never really ready to be kids. That's the whole point. You dive in.